I'm Dr. Drew Miller, retired Air Force Colonel, intelligence officer, and president of the Collapse Survival Institute. This policy recommendation briefing addresses the vital need to stop interfering in China's unfinished civil war with Taiwan and end any promises of aiding Taiwan's defense. An earlier threat assessment briefing explained China's ability to win a war over Taiwan. They could fatally cripple the U.S. with attacks on our extremely vulnerable electric grid, our Achilles heel that our irresponsible government knows about but won't acknowledge or fix. With their willingness to escalate to nuclear weapons use, China can engage in nuclear chicken to force the U.S. to back down. China's economy and society and government are far better prepared to wage a nuclear war and survive in the age of collapse, disasters, and weapons of mass destruction. That briefing also explained the real truth about Taiwan. Taiwan is a province of China that broke away after the communists won their civil war in 1949. George Marshall and Truman wisely refused to intervene in the Civil War, but due to Senator McCarthy and the Red Scare campaigns of the 1950s, career politicians vowed to fight communists, getting us into the Vietnam War and a commitment to defend Taiwan. The United Nations recognizes Taiwan not as an independent nation, but a breakaway part of China, as does official U.S. policy since Kissinger and Nixon rightly restored friendly terms with China. China is committed to retake control of their breakaway province by military force if necessary. This diagram was briefed in that other threat assessment briefing, showing how despite having conventional weapons technology superiority and more nuclear weapons, the U.S. is not going to succeed in a war with China over Taiwan. You can pause this video to study the reasons laid out in this slide. In this policy briefing, we explain why arguments for defending Taiwan are wrong, not good reason to risk millions of U.S. deaths and possibly the destruction of our nation. I will also address humanitarian concerns and claims that China poses a risk of military expansion beyond reclaiming their breakaway province of Taiwan. Then I will cover the huge benefits of ceasing our interference in China's civil war, enormous defense savings, avoid a likely losing war, and the opportunity to partner with China to control artificial intelligence, by far the worst threat humanity has ever faced. Finally, I'll cover the big shift in U.S. defense policy we need away from fighting foreign armies overseas towards homeland defense and collapse survival. Taiwan's huge Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, produces 90% of the world's leading-edge chips. Critics of abandoning Taiwan cite risks of China controlling Taiwan's semiconductor production. This is a nonsensical argument. First, in a war, these plants would likely be destroyed. Taiwan has threatened to destroy them if China invades. Without equipment and ongoing support from companies in Europe, the plants can't operate. The Dutch company ASML can remotely disable their irreplaceable equipment. Taiwan can destroy these plants. Taiwanese people can refuse to work there or easily sabotage production. As TSMC's chairman explained, nobody can control TSMC by force, since the company and others can render TSMC factories non-operable. China would likely prefer keeping these plants in production, a powerful incentive for renegotiated reunification rather than invasion. If China does want to stop computer chip production, they can disrupt it to any country outside China, since they control many of the critical raw materials needed. Gallium is a key input for new advanced chip designs, and the PRC produces 98% of the world's supply. The argument that loss of Taiwan's chip plants would be a fatal threat to the U.S. is nonsense. War with China is far more dangerous, risking nuclear war or loss of our electric grid that could kill almost all of us. Defending democracy or human rights in Taiwan is also not a valid reason to interfere in China's internal affairs. If that is our priority, more important than keeping our own citizens alive, then we should put the Kurds first. The Kurdish people have no country, and they're persecuted by Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. They have a stronger case as a distinct ethnic group than the Taiwanese, who have been Chinese, part of China for centuries. Han Chinese are 95% of Taiwan's population, the same ethnic group as 91% of mainland China, all one nation that the UN and the US officially recognize as one state. China is abusing Uyghurs and Muslims in China. Are we pledging to defend them too? The US Constitution was designed to limit government to only doing what we, the people, authorize. The federal government was not designed or authorized by the people to protect foreign citizens. When that serves our protection, that's fine. But defending Taiwan at the price of a war with China that could kill millions of Americans is wrong. Nor is it clear that US defense backing, which leads to war, is better for Taiwanese survival than forcing Taiwan to negotiate a peaceful settlement with China. Abandoning support of Taiwan will not undermine US allies in Asia or lead to Hitler-like Chinese military conquests. Charles Glazer, a professor and author of international relations, advocated in Foreign Affairs for abandoning the US commitment to defend Taiwan, citing the risk of a devastating war with China and interfering in their internal affairs. The US commitment to defend the truly independent nations of South Korea, Japan, Philippines, and Australia, and others would not be impacted by rightly staying out of China's internal affairs. With our historic Monroe Doctrine threatening nuclear war over Soviet missiles in Cuba, not our country, not our citizens, the US has no credible claim to inject itself in China-Taiwan civil war dispute. Critics attack Glazer's proposal as appeasement. China is not Nazi Germany pursuing blatant expansion. China has not been attempting to expand by military conquest. There is no convincing evidence of Chinese plans for conquering other nations, while the US president threatens to seize Greenland, Panama, and has conducted unsanctioned, unconstitutional attacks on several nations. China is our major military threat because of their justified commitment to retake Taiwan and our involvement in Taiwan's defense, and we face no reasonable threat of war with China and no reasonable threat of Chinese expansion. Taiwan has been a breakaway province of China for 75 years. They've had the wealth and the time to negotiate or build sufficient deterrent defense. Taiwan has historically spent 2% of their GDP on defense, less than the 3.4% the US spends. Nor does Taiwan have a strong army. Military service lasts just 4 months, with strong draft dodging and staffing levels in some units below 80%. Taiwan has exploited US domestic politics and career politicians, leveraging fear over communism and US defense manufacturers lobbying for their national defense interests. There are enormous benefits if we drop the US defense commitment to Taiwan. We could stop the military arms race with China and slash hundreds of billions of dollars annually from the defense budget. No need for spending over $1 trillion, correct, $1 trillion on the F-35 aircraft or $13 billion on a Ford-class aircraft carrier and a long list of other horrendously expensive weapon systems. The US defense industry loves supplying arms to Taiwan and building up our military forces to be capable of fighting the huge Chinese military. Weapon sales to Taiwan and the buildup of US military forces to oppose China are also a huge payoff for career politicians to collect money from defense industry lobbyists and then votes for defense manufacturing jobs in their districts. In my book, Preparing to Survive in the Age of Collapse, I explain how big defense contractors are huge lobbyists and campaign donors. They spent $83 million over the past 2 election cycles to buy votes from both parties. Defense contractors spread jobs across as many states as possible. Lockheed Martin claims the F-35 program creates jobs in 48 states. That's how they get votes. We always need a strong military, but eliminate our #1 military threat, China, and we can safely slash military spending while improving our prospects for avoiding massive casualties in war. In sum, career politicians have misled the public and set us up for an unnecessary, suicidal conflict with China, driven by defense industry donations and district jobs for military programs, leading us into a situation where if we get into war with China and it becomes nuclear or they attack our electric grid, we could lose most of our population. We've entered the age of collapse, an era where new technologies render citizens vulnerable to attack and foreign defense unable to protect our homeland. Man-made threats and new technologies are rapidly increasing the inevitability of huge disasters that lead to collapse our economy not functioning, and widespread, long-lasting loss of law and order as desperate people starving to death steal and kill to survive. Bioengineering today allows a single individual to create a virus that could exterminate most people, or a plant virus to destroy crops. When our fragile electric grid goes down, something not just China and Russia, but a terrorist group or a tiny nuclear power like North Korea could do, most Americans could die. Artificial intelligence gives individuals the ability to invent new weapons of mass destruction. The likelihood of a collapse disaster is high, estimated at a 16 to 57% annual chance of a collapse disaster. Throughout U.S. military history, we basically followed Clausewitzian principles of war, focused on conquer and destroy the armed power of the enemy's army. My book explains how we need a real revolution in military affairs, a fundamental shift away from Clausewitzian strategy of armies clashing on foreign battlefields, which are irrelevant when the citizens they are supposed to protect are dying from a virus, are starving to death, are getting killed in their homes by marauders. We must abandon our traditional military focus on destroying a nation state's armed forces and instead focus on preemptively countering WMD attacks, defending our homeland, and surviving the attacks we cannot forestall. The vast majority of DoD forces and budgeting are focused on traditional clash of military forces overseas, not homeland defense. U.S. strategic military focus needs to shift not to the Pacific to defend Taiwan and counter China, but to homeland defense and collapse survival. This will save hundreds of billions of dollars and help reduce our unsustainable national debt. A different Collapse Survival Institute briefing provides another huge reason to stop interfering with Taiwan, to get China's support for controlling artificial intelligence, to limit AI's ability to design new weapons of mass destruction, and the risk of rogue superintelligent AGI systems exterminating the human race. Artificial intelligence is the worst threat humanity has faced. That briefing calls for a complete ban on superintelligent AGI enforced by an international AI control alliance led by the US and China. Quoting the leading AI safety experts, if superintelligent artificial general intelligence is created, if anyone builds it, everyone dies. You can absolutely reject an AI arms race with China as the solution, and that's what Alex Karp at Palantir advocates for his own profit and benefit. That guarantees annihilation of all of us. An AI control alliance uniting the US and our allies with China and all countries is vital. This is covered in Preparing to Survive in the Age of Collapse and that separate Collapse Survival Institute briefing on the AI threat. We have no business interfering in China's civil war with Taiwan. By ending our commitment now, we give Taiwan time to negotiate acceptable reunification terms or build sufficient defenses to deter invasion. Since Taiwan, the Netherlands, and the US can destroy or disable Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing base if we do fear China exploiting it, China has strong incentives to negotiate reunification rather than invade. If Taiwan chooses to fight, they can, and they can destroy their chip plants. This is a matter for China and the Chinese people to decide, not outside powers. Staying on the present course will likely lead to nuclear war with China and possibly loss of our electric grid that could kill most Americans. The US must abandon Taiwan's defense and shift defense policy and spending away from traditional overseas combat towards top priority on defending the US homeland, preempting WMD attacks, and supporting homeland defense and recovery from collapse disasters. I'm Colonel Miller with the Collapse Survival Institute. Prepare for the worst, enjoy the present.